Hi, for this video forum, I'm focusing on the 1692 Stamford, Connecticut witch trials, more specifically, the trial of Elizabeth Clausen. The Stamford witch trials started on May 27, 1692, after a 17-year-old French servant named Catherine Branch complained of a sudden infliction. From the deposition of Daniel Westcott, who was her master, it was obvious the girl suffered from some type of seizure, possibly epilepsy. My first primary source that I found was the actual deposition from Mr. Westcott. And in it, just a little bit that I pulled out regarding her suffering from the seizure. It said, when she was in those fits, rattling in her throat, she would put out her tongue to a great extent. I conceived beyond nature. And I put her tongue into her mouth again, and then I looked in her mouth, and could see no tongue, but as if it were a lump of flesh down her throat, and this of 10 times. This was my first primary source that I found regarding this topic. The second primary source that I found was actually from the niece of the Westcotts, named Lydia Penwire. And in her testimony, she had actually contradicted the accusation by Catherine Branch. In testimony taken August 24th, 1692, Lydia Penwire said that she heard her aunt, Abigail Westcott, say that her servant girl, Catherine Branch, was such a lying girl that, quote, that not anybody could believe one word what she said, and that she did not believe that any of the women who were accused of witchcraft were any more witches than she was, and that her husband would believe Catherine before he would believe Mr. Bishop or even herself. It seems that a lot of these witchcraft trials, there was a lot of false accusations, as we have pretty much, have found out now through history. On May 28th, Elizabeth Clausen was questioned whether or not she was, in fact, practicing witchcraft. And she had emphatically denied that she was no such person or knew any such person who did practice witchcraft. She did, though, say after making that statement, quote, she acknowledged that there had been dissension between herself and Daniel Westcott for about 8 or 9 years. Actually, the disagreement was more between Daniel's wife, Abigail, and Elizabeth Clausen over the difference in weight of the quantity of spun flax. So it turns out that this whole accusation was more of a disagreement between families, and it seemed more like a way for Mr. Westcott to go after Elizabeth Clausen. The tension between these two families may have been a factor that later resulted in Catherine's crying out on Elizabeth Clausen. Knowing that her residence at the Westcotts may be endangered by her affliction of seizures and by Abigail's distrust of her, it was to her advantage to accuse a person whom her mistress disliked. And that was the reason why she accused my great times 10 grandmother, Elizabeth Clausen, of practicing witchcraft. She did accuse 5 other women as well, not just my great times 10 grandmother. Now, there was a few other primary sources that I did locate for this. I did want to show you, I have a picture of the actual deposition by Lydia Penwire. It's pretty hard to make it out. Obviously, it's probably backwards now. But anyways, that was her deposition. And then I did also find an affidavit which attested to the good character of Elizabeth Clausen. The original manuscript is owned by the Stamford Historical Society, but there is a copy of it here, and you can see that. What ended up happening was there was over 75 people who had signed this document. More than half were men, stating that that Elizabeth Clausen was in fact innocent. She was a good moral person. She had a good character. She never been accused of any sort of witchcraft or anything in the past. So in the end, my great times 10 grandmother, Elizabeth Clausen, she was found not guilty. She did return to Stamford, where she remained with her husband, Stephen, and all of her family until she died in 1714 at the age of 83. I hope that she liked my presentation. Thank you.